Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce, and I am back with a solo episode. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but I am thrilled to be back talking some Cubs baseball as we get settled down with life, as the Cubs get settled down with disappointment, and the Brewers settle down with the NL Central. But before we get into everything baseball, as always, I want to remind you guys to head over to the YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the bell button on the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube page, and you will know when all of our great shows go live and any of our great content gets posted. You can follow along with us like us on Cubs on Tap. We got another show later this evening over at the Four Feathers podcast for those that are ready for Blackhawks hockey. Plenty of great material, great shows. So be sure to head over there and, do the whole Twitter thing too. We appreciate that as well. And if you want to join the conversation, you can join me on any platform. Just get in the comments and in the replies, and we'll be able to chat right here on the show today. So let's get into it, shall we? The series results weren't great. We're coming back to you after two Cubs series. The incredibly disappointing series loss to the Colorado Rockies over the weekend, and almost equally as disappointing series loss here to the Oakland Athletics that capped off this afternoon at Wrigley Field. Today was the final Wednesday 120 getaway day game of the season. So let that sink in for you here. A lot of finals, a lot of lasts coming up here now as the baseball schedule winds down and as the month of September really comes to a halt because all games are done as of the 29th, which is already, crazy enough, a week from Sunday. So the baseball season is coming quickly to an end, but this whole weekend was just irritating. And you know what? It was no different than the rest of the season for the Cubs. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves right now. It was the same thing we've seen all season long. It was blow leads late in games, after a great rally and they were able to claw their way back like in Colorado, allowing the long ball to kill you, which, we only saw it a few times this year. I don't think it was nearly as bad as last season, but, the Oakland series was pretty much that. The bullpen giving away leads. It really personified this whole season. And on top of it, Jordan Wicks hasn't looked right since returning from injury. Justin Steele comes back today, pitches ultimately pretty well when it's all said and done, but only is able to give you 2 2/3 because of the pitch count, coming back from the elbow issue. We're probably only going to see him maybe one more time the rest of the season. Would not be surprised if he got scratched in his final start of the year. Just because they don't want any long-term effects for him, obviously. This is just the last two series were nothing special. And it sucks because Monday's game was fun, right? They take care of business against the A's, a big lopsided score, good old crooked numbers that we'd love to see. Shota Imanaga sets a career high in strikeouts with 11, a couple of home runs as well. Dansby has a great night. Things are looking up, and then all of a sudden, Tuesday and Wednesday, they lay an egg. Ian Happ was great on Tuesday, and I was at the ballpark with Tyler. It was great. One final time for the season to be at the ballpark. And it was great to see Ian Happ go deep twice for what is now his 24th and 25th home runs of the season. But at the end of the day, it was just a day late and $1 short, and they couldn't get it done. And there were opportunities that they couldn't cash in. Again, it was the entire season personified in the course of these two series. Now, granted, the Colorado series obviously on the road, Athletic series at home, so you almost wish they would have at least been able to take care of business at home. They're unable to do so, so 2-4 in their last 6, and that is pretty much bottom them out in the wild card. They are currently 6.5, and we'll talk deeper into these metrics and numbers in a little bit. But they're 6.5 games out. It's probably going to be 7 by the time that most people are listening to this in podcast form on Thursday. And that's pretty much all she wrote, right? Playoff spots are already being locked up. We already kind of noted that the NL Central now belongs to the Milwaukee Brewers. They clinch with the Cubs loss today, which, what a tragic way to let the Brewers win the division, to lose to the Oakland Athletics. And I know they've been a good baseball team. Tyler pointed this out to me yesterday when we were at the ballpark. They've been one of the better teams in baseball since the All-Star break. But nobody's talking about them because nobody else really got hot. and, stole the spotlight, especially these playoff teams. A lot of teams just kind of continued to play the way they were playing before the All-Star break. Nobody got really hot after the All-Star break. Like, yeah, the Cubs turned it on a little bit, but, the Mets were already just scorching hot for most of the season. The Braves have been able to keep themselves in the wild card hunt despite a number of important injuries. It's brutal, man. It's absolutely brutal, and it will be surely something to see when it's all said and done here after these two series. But the Cubs lose a pair of series, man, and I think everybody here doesn't want to hear about these series. Truly, I think at the end of the day, it's people are just frustrated with the season, and I think these two series really just continue to kind of, I guess, drive that knife in a little deeper and just make people realize just how really disappointing the 2024 Cubs season was. And we're going to talk about it ad nauseum here on Cubs on Tap as we wane into November and December, and hopefully have some free agency action come the winter meetings. But right now, there is just nothing that the Cubs have done that I think people get people excited even for next season, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit here more at the end of the show too. But 6 games, you only managed to win 2 of them against far inferior, competition. And it just doesn't work out. A couple of quick comments, though. I do want to get to the comment section. And so love to everybody. Omar here says Tom Ricketts only cares about politics. He doesn't care about winning. I don't know how much Tom gets involved in politics, truly. I know his family obviously is super involved, and his brother most notably, but I don't know how much. Omar followed that up with Tom Ricketts needs to sell the Chicago Cubs. Probably not happening, unfortunately, as much as people might want that to happen. Jay here says Nationals beginning tomorrow night. Sure thing. That's 100% accurate. We'll touch on that a little bit later and what's to come with that next series. And then Scott from Iowa here. What a waste of a season. Well put. Well put. That one's getting a gold sticky star. Because I think, again, I think after these two series, it really feels that way right now as just kind of a waste of a season. And again, what was that, right? Like it's infuriating when we take this all the way back to the Cubs convention, which is always one of my favorite things to look forward to. It's always a great weekend with the boys. We film a lot of content. We put a lot of stuff out. And there's probably the most heightened sense of optimism around the team. And I'll tell you what, there was a couple of our Cubs on Tap panelists here that were kind of spot on this year. Juice was very much like, hey, I'll believe it when I see it to believe the hype. A couple of us really bought in heavy. And I think a lot of the fan base did. And I think that's a lot of why there's the frustrations around the team that, we're seeing in the comment section today that we've seen all season long. But you just wonder, what the hell was that? And again, these two series really just embodying the Cubs season as a whole. Just lackluster performances, disappointing efforts, giving away games. That's kind of the mantra around this 2024 Cubs team. You look back and you say, wow, man, if they had a proven closer, if the bullpen just pitched a little better early on and wasn't blowing leads, where are they? I remember the stat way back early in the season. Now, this is probably 60 games into the year, maybe 70 games into the year, but the Cubs would have had like almost 50 wins through like the first 70 games of the season if games ended after 7 innings because they blew so many games late. And then, of course, the bullpen starts to get their shit together late in the year, but then the offense is still super inconsistent. The only consistent thing about this season is the starting pitching has largely been the only constant for the Chicago Cubs. Everything else has been up and down. Dansby Swanson's season, he's gotten hot lately, sure, but really, really brutal start from him. You can say that about a lot of guys. Nico Horner was very much that way. Isaac Paredes, upon his arrival, was a little rough. In fairness, Morel before the trade was also rough, especially with the batting average. There's only been a couple of guys really outside of the starting pitching that even you could maybe even remotely say had a consistent season. Maybe Ian Happ, maybe Michael Busch, even though he, had his moments of hot and cold. really, that's there was a lot of growth. Don't get me wrong. There's still some positives here, and again, we're going to appreciate those. I think when we get into the off season, the PCA storylines, the Miguel Amaya taking a step forward. Some of the young pitching that showed promise this year despite injuries getting in the way, Ben Brown, in some of those names. But just these last two series, man, what was that? Like, these were the two that people looked at the schedule and went, they should win those series. Hell, they should potentially sweep both of those series, at least taking 2 out of 3. And instead, it's the flip-flop. They lose both series, taking 2 out of 3. And again, giving away a lot of leads in the series as well, which is surely just the most disappointing part of it all. Jay says, knife through the heart for this season, 100%, 100%. And Hank here, he says, I'm not disappointed. I expected another 83-win season like last year, and the same goes for next year. And I'm going to return to Hank's comment here in a little bit, because I think that helps kind of outline some of the thoughts that I had at the ballpark last night, that Tyler had. We were hoping to be able to get together for a show today. Schedules did not allow for it, unfortunately. But I want to relay some of those discussions that Tyler and I had. Oh, the ice cream man's going by our block. That's sweet. But speaking of that, I'm gonna take a quick break, and I'm gonna pop my little Olipop here. I need some root beer. #crack 'em. Oh, wet the whistle a little bit before we keep going. So let's continue down the rundown here. Justin Steele's return, a silver lining. Good to see him back. I think really just at the end of the day, also Jorge Lopez was activated off the IL today, in addition to Justin's return. Good to see these guys back. Good to see them healthy. I think Jorge Lopez is very much a Cub next year. I think whatever they found with him coming back, he returned to the form that, or at least close enough to the form that made him an all-star as a Baltimore Oriole years back. I think he's a guy they can absolutely work into this bullpen for next season. And obviously, Justin's return is always fantastic. Obviously, we were robbed of a ton of Justin today. Unfortunately, only getting to see that 2 2/3 innings from the Cubs ace. But again, good to see him back on the mound. Surely a guy that, just down the stretch here, it's just about staying healthy. I think everybody knows what Justin Steele is and what he brings to this Cubs team. He even lowers his ERA today. In addition, came into the game with a 3.06. Leaves with a 3.03. Only gave up 2 hits. He did walk 3 and only struck out 1. But again, no runs off the 2 2/3 from Mr. Steele. So good to see him back. Again, I don't know how much we're going to see of him really the rest of the way. I think there's a world where, he pitches probably one more game if we're doing the math. Probably in that Philadelphia series is my guess. And then we're probably not going to see Justin again, before the season's done. One more off day incorporated into the rest of the schedule as well. Justin had a hell of a season, a turbulent season because of the injury and then the re-injury late. And it took him a while to kind of get going. And he got to that form, and we saw that peak of dominance yet again this year that I think we saw, especially late last year. He's right there. I mean, he's a consistent performer. I think as long as he stays healthy early and often next year, he's once again going to be, I think, in the Cy Young conversation, just as he was in 2023. And, hopefully the Cubs maybe add to the rotation. I don't think that's a bad idea in the offseason. I know it's not the only thing they need to do. But surely, adding another arm into that rotation to back up guys like Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga would surely be nice. But good to see Justin Steele's return today, albeit only for 2 2/3 innings. Another comment here from the comment section is coming from Scott from Iowa. He says, DFA, Mastroboni, Wisdom, and Talkman, as they are not a part of the future. He says, call up Kevin Alcantara, Owen Casey, and Moises Ballesteros. He says, put them in the lineup and give them experience here late in the year. You know what? I think this is an interesting thing. I don't see the Cubs DFAing anybody this late in the season. I know Craig Kimbrell got DFA'd by the Orioles today, and surely showing that, teams are still willing to make the moves and DFA guys if they absolutely need to. I am intrigued, though, if there is going to be any young guys getting a look type thing, right? Are we going to see a Luis Vasquez the last weekend of the season, maybe for a couple games? I I think we'd be more likely, Scott, to see Kevin Alcantara just because he's already on the 40 man and it doesn't require a 40-man transaction. I don't know if we see Owen Casey and Ballesteros, just simply from the sheer standpoint of they would need to be a 40-man acquisition. I know by DFAing the trio that you just outlined, that would free up a trio of roster spots on the 40-man, but I don't think Talkman's getting DFA'd. They have an infatuation with Wisdom. I don't see that happening either. Yeah, although I agree. I don't think, I think Talkman might be the only one worth keeping on the 40-man. But the Cubs are going to Cub. And unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to see any young guys, but I'd be intrigued to see if we get a chance to see any youth, in this last kind of week or so of the season here, especially because the Cubs are getting closer and closer and closer to officially being eliminated from the wild card. I don't think much else needs to happen. We're getting dangerously close here to the Cubs officially being eliminated. Unfortunately, I don't think the only team that's actually clinched anything is the Brewers. The Brewers are the only team that have clinched the division so far. Everybody else is still technically in it. But the Cubs would need a lot of help and obviously a lot of wins here down the stretch. So interested to see what approach they take with the youth, Scott. I think that's a fair comment and an interesting point to keep in mind here as the schedule winds to an end. Let's talk about this really quick and just address the elephant in the room really fast. And that is the Milwaukee Brewers winning the division. I know there was a lot of, Council's gone. They're not going to be the same. They retained Pat Murphy, who was Council's bench coach. So I think a lot of the things stood, but they showed they have a good roster. And it was just a handful of players that carried them for a large part of the season. Obviously, they lost Yelich to injury for the whole year. Adames had a really good year, but he's not going to be back next year. He's a free agent. He's certainly going to get paid by somebody, especially in a league where people are constantly searching for a consistent shortstop. And in addition to that, right, the small ball, some of the best hitting with runners in scoring position, they had a lot of luck, and a lot of baseball is luck, and that's okay. But I think there's a lot to be said though about how the Cubs felt like, they were kind of the big swing and what's in the locker room, and the Brewers stole their lunch money and clinched the division. Again, the first team in baseball to clinch anything for the postseason is the Milwaukee Brewers, and albeit with a less than sparkling record. I mean, they're not going to win 100 games. I just don't see it happening. They're at 87 wins right now. They still play the Phillies tonight. Obviously, the Phillies could beat them. In addition to that, there's plenty of opportunity here for, a couple more losses down the stretch. So they're probably going to win the division with about 92 wins is my guess when it's all said and done, maybe 91. And it's unfortunate. It really is. But the Brewers take over and win the NL Central. So they will represent the Central in the playoffs come October. Let's get into our next point here. What's next for improvement? So this is what I was referring to a little bit earlier in the show that Tyler and I discussed last night at the ballpark. And it was just about how does this team get better? And I'm going to bring back Hank's comment here as well. He said, I'm not disappointed. I expected another 83-win season like last year, and the same goes for next year. The Cubs very well probably will get to that 83 marker right around that, maybe 82 even. They'll probably finish slightly above 500, just like they did a year ago. And I kind of tend to agree with Hank because I said this to Tyler last night. I said, where do you really improve this team? And it's not from like they should do this, this guy's available, but more just like understanding the contracts on the books, understanding the roster spots that guys have locked up, understanding where their strengths and weaknesses are. They're pretty much dead set at most positions come next season. To me, there's no sense in trading Ian Happ. Let's start there. First off, the guy hit 25 home runs for you. He's leading your club in homers this season. And you know what you're getting with Ian Happ. He walks, sure, he strikes out, but, maybe he is only a 240 to 250 hitter, but he's going to give you some slug, and he's going to play Gold Glove defense in the outfield for $20 million a season. He's probably a guy that I would argue next year might even have a better season. And sure, it'd be nice, you would think, right, to get value for him, but what are you going to get? More prospects? Like the Cubs are beyond the whole prospect bullshit. It's not the we need to continue collecting assets for the minors. It's we need to make moves to affect the major league roster. But Ian Happ's probably not going anywhere. PCA has earned himself center field, right? There's the youth, there's the young superstar. I think that every Cubs fan's hoping for. Hopefully, he puts it together over 162 next year, like he has in this latter run of the course of this season. But he's locked in for center field. And I know everybody reads the reports and hears the whispers just like the rest of us do here at Cubs on Tap. Belly's probably opting in. Something would have to greatly go wrong or go in Belly's favor for more money on the market for him to opt out of that contract. So at least for one more season, Cody Bellinger is a Chicago Cub, and he's probably playing right field because Seiya Suzuki, who, by the way, also under contract for 2 more years with a no trade clause. Sure, you can get guys to waive it, but he's locked in as your DH every day because he can't play the field. And he hit well. I mean, he's hitting almost 280 for the season, but it feels like a very underwhelming 280. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but he's locked in for 2 more years. And I don't think anybody's going to take him for the 20 million bucks right now that he's worth. Maybe somebody will, especially a team that's like, hey, he fits perfectly in our lineup and we have guys that can protect him. And, and again, that would require him waiving his no trade clause, which again, in baseball, I think is a lot more likely than some other sports, but nonetheless, so those are 4 positions that are locked up. And then you look around the infield. Isaac Paredes isn't going anywhere after what they gave up for him. Hunter Biggie's been good in Tampa. Morel has struggled. But you gave up assets for him, and he's young. Isaac's not going anywhere. I think Isaac has a better year next year. From a defensive standpoint, from an offensive standpoint, moving teams in the middle of the year like that is tough. I think he's going to benefit from a full season of playing at Wrigley and a full season of being the Chicago Cubs and knowing he's not going anywhere. And again, he's under control for 4 more years after this one, 3 more years after this one. He's a Cub. Dansby's sure as hell not going anywhere because big contract, big money, and he still plays a good defensive shortstop. Hopefully he gets his shit together with the bat a little bit more next season. And by get his shit together, I mean, if he hits 250 and gives you 25 bombs, I would be happy with that from Dansby Swanson. Michael Busch arguably was one of your best defenders all season. He's played a really good first base. And are you really going to try and move him and pay Pete Alonso, who had a really down year this year, and he's going to want a stupid amount of money? I don't know. I don't think so. So he's probably locked in at first. And then catching. Sure, you could add another catcher, but let's be real. Most catchers on the free agent market aren't superstars. You're not getting a guy who's going to come in and make a legitimate difference in this lineup. If you're going to get that kind of guy, you got to go trade for him. Maybe a Logan O'Hoppe, who they were reportedly interested in at the deadline because he's a young catcher. Somebody of the Shea Langeliers, who went deep twice last night at Wrigley on Tuesday night. Maybe it's somebody like that to split time with Miguel Amaya. And that would look really nice as an improvement. But again, that's a trade. There is no just easy free agent signing of plug and play. So as I go around the diamond, you see there's probably only one vacancy I could realistically see the Cubs moving on from, and that's Nico Horner. I think Juice was on to something. I think when we talked last season, asking about Nico and is he going to play out that contract as a Chicago Cub? And I don't think he is. I think he's a part of a trade deal this offseason. So realistically, second base is the only place you can upgrade per se in this Cubs lineup. So, Hank, I tend to agree with you, man. Unless guys exceed what they did this season, you're looking at pretty much the same offensive output from a year ago. Now, the weird thing is this was an offensive team last season that was the 5th best in baseball, 6th best in baseball from a run scoring perspective. They are nowhere close to that this season. So there is certainly hope that they could return to some of those levels. Obviously, Bellinger was playing at an MVP pace in the second half. I don't know if he's going to do that again. But I think there's enough guys where if they just are a little more consistent, maybe they are just good enough offensively to get it done. And I mean, they're not just good enough, but maybe they are good enough offensively to get it done. Maybe they're not top 5 in the league, but maybe they're top 10, top 12. which I think is good enough given the pitching and the defense to win ball games. And like Hank says here, Belly will pick up his option, and that absolutely limits what the Cubs can do from an improvement standpoint. And Hank says he wants competition for second because Nico's numbers just aren't good enough. And I agree. And I think I just don't think Nico's on the team next year. I think there's a chance that they could give a Matt Shaw an opportunity to win second. But again, how marginally does that improve from an offensive standpoint? Certainly probably does at least a little bit, but does it really do that much as a guy playing in his first year in the major leagues and he's played one minor league season plus? I don't know. And I think that's the struggle I'm having with it, because you could sit here and say, in accordance with the rumors, that Corbin Burnes is their top target in free agency this year. Sure. Maybe they go out and they get that guy. And he replaces a Kyle Hendricks, who sadly is done as a Cub after this season. So enjoy his last start or two here, folks, because that'll be it for Kyle in Chicago. But even then, are your young arms going to stay healthy? It's great to have depth, but depth is only great when they're actually available. Hayden Wesneski was injured for a large part of the season. Wicks was gone for most of the year. Ben Brown's continued to be out. It's really been the only consistent guys from a health standpoint for the most part have been Javier Assad, Shota Imanaga, and that's about it. I mean, it's limited. And Jameson Taillon had a good year. So, I mean, you could roll into next year with Taillon, Steele, Shota, Burnes, and then you play, hey, who earns the fifth spot, which I think Javier Assad just gets it's his until it's not treatment, with guys like Hayden and Brown and some of these other guys as that depth. A Caleb Killian hopefully stays healthy, right? So there's just not a lot of improvement room unless big trades are made. And that's where I kind of want to get to this. What's next for improvement? I don't think the Cubs are going to get insanely active in free agency. Maybe bullpen help, I think, is a place where we could see them make some moves. Surely, potentially that other starter that they want to go get. But realistically, to me, if the Cubs are going to make moves and waves to improve the roster, it's going to have to be via trade. And I think now more than ever, I think it's going to have to cost them prospect capital. But now is the time where Jen needs to say, okay, we have all this talent. Either A, it needs to be coming soon to help the big club, or it needs to be moved for things that are going to help the big club. To me, that's the way the Cubs improve this offseason. Now, I don't know how creative they're going to get with trades. I don't know what's going to happen. They might only make one trade because that might be all that comes to fruition. But it's going to be really interesting to see what they do, because otherwise, I agree with Hank. To me, you're looking at next year maybe a marginal improvement if you get a guy like Burnes. Maybe you're an 88-win team. Is that enough to really do anything more than say you made the playoffs and got your shit kicked in the first round? I don't know. I don't think it is. So it'll be something that we have to keep an eye on there. A couple more comments here. Omar says he hopes that Nico is here next year. Hope Cubs Nico Horner next year. He is not my favorite player. Oh, so he's hoping that he does not stay. I think he's just the most likely trade chip, unfortunately, on the big league roster, just because of the nature of the position he plays in his contract. Scott from Iowa says, crazy theory. Cubs sign Soto. Belly goes to first. Bush goes to third, and Paredes gets traded for a reliever. Paredes isn't getting traded, Scott. I hate to break it to you. They gave up assets for the guy halfway through the season, and he's under control for multiple years. If he was a 1-year plus rental where next year is his last year under contract, maybe. But I don't see it happening. And I honestly, and this was something that Tyler and I played. So I'm gonna hit your crazy theory, Scott, with another crazy theory. And that is, what if you move Michael Bush to second base? Trade Nico Horner, and then you free up right field to be that position where you go get somebody. Now, will it be Juan Soto? I hope so. Is it going to realistically be? Probably not. But a guy who honestly would be a nice fit in right field for the Cubs is Anthony Santander. I mean, he's coming off a career season with the Orioles. He's been a good power hitter for the last handful of seasons. I think the only concern there, he's a little older, right? So if you're paying him big term, there's concern there for the later part of that contract. Now you go get a Juan Soto. I mean, that cures a lot of ills, at least offensively, right? You put a Juan Soto in this lineup, I think it completely flips the lineup on its head in terms of its ability to produce. And I will say this, by improving via free agency, you don't have to give up prospect capital right away. So if these guys start to absolutely light the world on fire in the first half next year, either guys can be called up in the event that they're just outplaying whoever plays their current position, or they can be moved for those pieces that put you over the edge and maybe take you into the next stratosphere. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens and where things go from there. I think Bush would be more likely to go to second, Scott, truly, than they go to third, just because of the nature of them trading for Paredes. Omar says here he would like to see Cam Smith play second base for the Cubs in the future, maybe. I think Cam Smith's going to play third. I mean, that's his position. He's never played second. So I don't think they're just going to flip him to second base because it feels like the logical fit. I think Cam Smith is going to be a great pro. I also don't think we're going to see Cam Smith soon. I think he'll probably play all of next season in the minors. Unless he's putting up an 1,000+ OPS at every level, and then they're going to have no choice but to call him up. That's a great problem to have when the time comes. But for the time being, I mean, I think pumping the brakes with Cam Smith for now is fine because the kid's only got like 30 games of professional ball experience. But he'll be a third baseman. I don't think we'll ever see him play second. I think guys that we would be more likely to see play second in the future if they rely on prospect pool, James Triantos, Matt Shaw, those type of players, I think would be the first guys we see more so than a Cam Smith. So a question that I'm going to be probably kicking around quite a bit as this season winds down is just what's next for improvement? Like, where do they go from here to actually make this roster better, and how creative does Jed get? Because it sounds like he's back for 2025 by all reports. Obviously, nothing's technically official, but that's the rumor, that's the rumbling. But that's his last season under contract is in 2025. So what does Jed do to pole vault this Cubs team into competitive, truly competitive, not this bullshit that we saw this year? I think he has to get aggressive. Otherwise, his job's on the line, and if they put up another 83-win season next year, he's gone. And somebody else comes in and tries to rework this roster. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens from here. Obviously, the season's not over yet, and we're well away from any kind of actual moves in baseball being made until this winter. So it's going to be a lot of what if and hypothetical situations from here until then to see how they improve going forward. Playoff update, as we mentioned a little bit ago, Cubs are 6.5 at the time of this recording out of the wild card. That very well could be 7. The Mets play the Nationals tonight, and the Braves are in Cincinnati this evening as well. Diamondbacks are at Colorado, and the Padres are hosting the Astros. So, again, that number could grow. I mean, if the Cubs continue to play at this rate from just a 5-5 in their last 10 perspective, I mean, you're realistically looking at them finishing with, again, those 82-ish, 83-ish wins, and nowhere near a playoff spot because 83 is the number to get into the last wild card picture right now. So, and the Mets are good. They've had a good season. They've had a really good season. And so have the Diamondbacks and so have the San Diego Padres. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But Cubs are not in the playoff picture. They are on the outside looking in. So we will see what comes from that. Finally, before I wrap up and get out of here for today, what's on tap next? And that is the Washington Nationals. It's a 4-game set for the Cubs coming up here at Wrigley Field. Jay noted it a little bit earlier in our comment section. The Nationals are next. Thursday night is the last night game at Wrigley Field for the season. We talked about, it's going to be an episode of a lot of lasts because a lot of them are coming up. That's one of them. The final night game of the season tomorrow night at Wrigley Field. It's a 6:40 first pitch. Get out to the ballpark if you can. I mean, I know they're not winning games. They're not going to make the playoffs. Tickets are dirt cheap right now if you're looking to get out to the ballpark. and just take in Wrigley at least one last time. The weather was beautiful last night. It was a great night to be at the ballpark despite the loss. And I feel satisfied, at the end of 2024. I went to the most games I've ever had in my entire life in one season this year. So it was really cool, despite the lack of wins and the lack of a real playoff push from this team. But yeah, one more night game against the Nationals tomorrow night. And I highly encourage if you can get out to the ballpark to do so. The final 3 games of the series, all 1:20 starts, obviously, over the weekend. Then the Cubs venture to Philly. Those are 3 night games on the road. They have an off day Thursday before they wrap up with the Reds, not this weekend, but the following weekend. And that will close out the campaign for the Cubs. On the bump tomorrow night, it will be Javier Assad taking the mound on Thursday. Tyone is slated to throw on Friday. Kyle Hendricks to throw on Saturday. If you can get out there Saturday and see Kyle throw, probably for the last time at Wrigley, I highly recommend you do so. He might get the last Wrigley or the last Friday start against the Reds, but it'll be one of his probably final starts as a Cub. So if you can get out and see Kyle, I highly recommend to do so and show him the love. And Shota Imanaga will throw on Sunday. So a great game to get out and see. I mean, why wouldn't you want to see Shota Imanaga? I think he's going to still be in the running, at least for the Cy Young. I don't know if he's going to win it. He'll probably more likely than not win the Rookie of the Year for the NL. So at least there'll be something positive about this 2024 season. And speaking of that game, if you want to go see Shota live, I have 2 tickets. I can't use them. They're bleacher seats. So if you are listening to this, you want to go to the game, hit me up on Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it. That's the best place to find me, at Loose on Tap. And let me know you want the tickets. Really, I'm just trying to get rid of them. I'd rather them get used than go unused. So let me know. I would love to give those to somebody and let somebody go to the ballpark and see Shota shove hopefully one more time at Wrigley. If we're doing the math here, Steele probably throws in, like I said, in that Philly series for that first game. The second game, potentially looking at Jordan Wicks throwing, unless they relegate him to the bullpen. The third game, you're probably looking at, so Wicks probably would be Monday, pardon me. Tuesday would be Steele. Wednesday would be Assad. Thursday off day. So then it'd probably be Kyle, Kyle, and Shota to finish the year. So it's a hell of a group. Again, get out to the ballpark if you can. Go see them. But it all starts 4 games against the Nats. It'd be nice to see some wins. Let's be real. Will they get those wins? I don't know. But they have an opportunity. Last 4-game set of the season, last 4-game home set of the season. Again, and then after this one, just 2 series remain for the Cubs on the 2024 campaign. And we will be with you after the action. Hopefully over the weekend, we got to get some scheduling and things like that sorted out for a show after the National Series. We will for sure be back after the Philly series. Probably more likely than not that Thursday is what we will probably aim for. And then we will get back to, with everybody probably that Monday or Tuesday right after the season concludes and do a little bit of a full wrap-up show. Hopefully we'll get the whole crew on for that one as well. And then, of course, we'll probably do one more show then when Jed Hoyer speaks for the last time this season before a little bit of a hiatus. And then we get into the winter months. You probably won't hear from us again until November when it's all said and done. After that, me personally, I'll be teetering more of my coverage over to the Blackhawks and to the Bears, which has already begun because those seasons are almost starting or have already started. But yeah, disappointing Cubs season, disappointing Cubs series, and but it's still been fun. And it's still been been a good time talking with everybody here on these shows. Before I get out of here, as always, I want to remind everybody Cubs on Tap is one of 2 official shows covering the Chicago Cubs here for the On Tap Sports Network. Our friends over at the Dingers podcast were live last night. Be sure to check out that most recent episode from the Dingers crew. You can find them at Dinger Cubs on the socials. You can also rewatch that episode right here on the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube channel. In addition to that, we are Cubbies on Tap on the socials here for Cubs on Tap. Be sure to follow us and give us some love as well. I am at Loose on Tap. You know the rest of the boys' names. If you don't know them by now, I don't know what to tell you, but go give all the boys some love as well as Bobby Foster. Those guys do a great job here covering the Chicago Cubs. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, Bears. Obviously, we know where that stands. Go check out Bears on Tap. Four Feathers will run after this show if you're watching along with us live. If you're listening to this later on, there will be a brand new Four Feathers out for you to listen to as well. That will be myself and Tony Marchese getting ready because training camp opens on Thursday for the Chicago Blackhawks. And yes, the Bulls are right around the corner. So be ready to check out what's coming up here from the Bulls on Tap crew this season. OnTapSportsNet.com, at OnTapSportsNet on the socials, the OnTap Sports Network. Go and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. I appreciate everybody joining me in the comments section like you guys always do. You guys were great. Thank you to everybody, Scott, Jay, Hank, as well as Omar for jumping into the conversation. Appreciate everybody else that just listened along and listened to me babble for a little bit over 40 minutes here. As we mentioned, we'll be back following the upcoming National Series, and then it's just the Phillies and the Reds before the Cubs wrap up the season as a whole. So you got about 3 shows from us after this one before it is all said and done, at least for about a month or two. And we really start to ramp things back up then in November. Until then, you guys know the drill. FTB, the FTC as always, and let's go Cubbies.